On my birthday, my husband walked into our living room with a family I'd never seen before. A whole life he had hidden for 30 years. Everyone waited for me to cry, scream, collapse, but instead, I stood up. Before we dive in, if you love intense, real-life style drama stories about betrayal, revenge, and women reclaiming their power, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode. Like, comment, and share to help this story reach more people. Happy birthday, Mom! My daughter's voice floated from the kitchen as she arranged a dozen pastries on the counter. The house smelled like cinnamon and vanilla. Warm, sweet, familiar. Exactly the way I liked starting my morning. I had just turned 58 and all I wanted was peace, quiet, and my little family around me. But there's something funny about peace. It's usually the moment right before your life explodes. I noticed my husband, Daniel, pacing near the window, hands behind his back, breathing uneven, like a man rehearsing a confession. I'd been married to him for 32 years. I knew every version of his walk. His stressed walk, his angry walk, his guilty walk. This one? This was the I hope this doesn't ruin everything walk. He kept checking his watch, glancing outside, and pretending not to. My daughter raised her eyebrow at me, silently asking, "What's up with him?" I just shrugged, because the truth was, I'd been waiting for this day. Not my birthday. Not my birthday. No. The day his secrets finally walked into the light. I told myself years ago that if Daniel ever tried to bring his past into my present, I would meet it with dignity, with calm, with strength. After surviving 3 decades beside a man who thought silence was the same as honesty, I had learned how to keep my own composure tucked neatly behind my smile. At 11:03 a.m., his phone buzzed. Once, twice, then again. He swallowed hard. Then he said the sentence that cracked open the floor beneath my feet, a sentence I still hear echoing in slow motion. "Honey, there are some people here to see you." My daughter looked confused. I looked at Daniel. His face said enough. Dread, guilt, fear, and something else. Something like relief. Relief is the kind of emotion a man feels when a lie becomes too heavy to carry. I walked to the window, and my breath caught. A woman in her late 40s stood beside a car. Next to her were 2 teenagers. Behind them, another woman, older, maybe in her 70s. The 4 of them waited like a family about to be welcomed inside. My heart didn't drop. It didn't race. It didn't even ache. Because I knew. I had known for years. Not the details, not the faces, but the truth beneath the truth. The kind of truth a woman feels in her bones, even when her mind tries to deny it. Daniel whispered, "Please, don't make a scene." I turned slowly. "Why would I make a scene?" I asked, my voice calm enough to scare him. The doorbell rang. The teens looked nervous. The older woman looked tense, but the woman in her 40s, she looked angry and boldly comfortable, like she had been waiting 30 years to stand on my porch. Daniel opened the door with a trembling hand. "Come in," he said. And they did, stepping into my home like they belonged there. My daughter stood frozen behind me. "Daniel Klee, these are my children." Silence. Heavy, suffocating, electric. I stared at him not in shock, but in acknowledgement. Finally, the truth had come home. The woman beside him crossed her arms. "Your other children," she corrected sharply. Daniel flinched. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I smiled a slow, measured smile that confused everyone in the room. "Welcome," I said. "I've been expecting you." The woman, clearly their mother, blinked. "You have?" "Oh yes," I answered, "for a very long time." Daniel looked at me like he was seeing a stranger. That made 2 of us. The older woman behind them spoke up. "I'm his mother," she said softly. "We thought it was finally time." I nodded. "Wonderful, since it's such a special occasion," I said, turning to Daniel. "I have something for you." My daughter stared at me, confused and concerned. But I stayed steady, because this moment, this exact moment, I had rehearsed it in my mind for years. I walked to the hallway closet, opened the door, pulled out a small box wrapped neatly with silver paper and a navy bow. Daniel looked at it like it might explode. I handed it to him. "Happy birthday to me," I said quietly. "And good luck." He swallowed. Then slowly, very slowly, he began to open the box. Inside was the one thing he never expected. Not anger, not tears, not a divorce paper. No, something much bigger. Something that would make the entire room fall silent. And make every one of his secrets finally collide with his consequences. He lifted the lid and froze. His daughter gasped. The older woman covered her mouth. The woman from outside whispered, "Oh my God." Daniel's face turned white, because inside that little silver box was the one thing that proved I had stopped playing dumb a long, long time ago. And the real story, the one no one was ready for, was only just beginning. Daniel held that silver box like it weighed 50 pounds. His fingers trembled as he lifted the folded papers inside. The very same papers I had tucked away months ago, long before this moment, long before he thought he'd be the one controlling the story. He unfolded the first page. The color drained from his face so fast, it was like someone pulled the plug on his blood supply. His mother stepped forward. What is that?" I clasped my hands together calmly. "Oh, that? Just a little something I put together after noticing that my husband of 32 years had been withdrawing money every month to a private account I wasn't supposed to know about." The room fell silent. The woman beside the teens, the one who had been bold enough to stand on my doorstep, tensed. Her lips pressed into a thin line. I continued. "Imagine my surprise when I discovered that account wasn't just for him, but for, well," I gestured at the teens, "them." One of the teenagers, a girl, maybe 16, looked down at her shoes. The boy beside her frowned, uncomfortable, maybe embarrassed. At least they had the decency to feel something. But their mother? She looked at me with a mixture of irritation and jealousy, as if my composure offended her. I could practically hear her thinking, "Why isn't she screaming? Why isn't she throwing things? Why is she so calm?" People who live on chaos expect chaos from others, not me. Daniel's voice cracked. Where did you get these?" "Oh, honey," I said gently, "you have no idea how much a woman sees when she stops looking at you with love and starts looking at you with clarity." My daughter, still standing behind me, whispered, "Mom, what's going on?" I reached for her hand. "It's okay, baby. Mom's fine." Daniel's mother stepped closer to him. "You told us she didn't know anything." He closed his eyes, shaking his head. I thought she didn't." "Oh, Daniel," I sighed. "You really think after 30 years I wouldn't notice when your loyalty started slipping through your pockets?" The mother of the teens suddenly snapped. "Enough. We didn't come here for drama. We came here because he promised." I cut her off with a raised hand. "Please, if you're going to stand in my home, then you're going to let me speak." She flinched, taken aback by the firmness in my tone. I walked to the coffee table, where I had placed a small stack of white envelopes earlier that morning. I picked one up and handed it to Daniel. "You see," I said, "I started digging because I knew something was wrong. Not wrong enough to blow up my life on suspicion, but wrong enough that I began preparing for the day when everything would come crashing down." He opened the envelope. Inside was a printed bank statement, then another, and another. All of them traced back to him. His mother whispered, You told me she couldn't handle the truth." I laughed. Oh, he's been telling people that for years. The woman, the mother of his other children, stepped closer. "So what, you've been stalking him?" "No." I looked her dead in the eye. "I've been married to him." Her jaw tightened. "You think I didn't know?" I continued softly. "You think I didn't feel it? The late-night phone calls, the work trips that didn't match your company's travel schedule, the missing money. The days when he came home smelling like a perfume I didn't wear." She looked away, because that part hit. Daniel's voice trembled. "Please, don't do this in front of the kids." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, you mean the children you lied to me about for 30 years? The ones you kept hidden while inviting me to family dinners, weddings, funerals, pretending I was the only wife you'd ever loved?" His daughter, the older one, the woman in her 40s, finally spoke. "You married him after he knew us, after he left us." I turned to her. "And he never told me you existed." She swallowed, unsure whether to hate me or pity me. I didn't blame her. Her entire life had been a shadow of his decisions. I continued, "But here's what matters right now. I didn't invite you into this home. Daniel did. And if he brought you here expecting a meltdown, he miscalculated." Daniel's mother whispered to him, "She's too calm. She knows something." I smiled. "Oh, she's smart. I like her." Then I took a step forward, slow, deliberate, and faced Daniel directly. "You kept a family hidden for 30 years. You sent them money, supported them, lied for them, covered for them. And now on my birthday, the day you should be celebrating the woman who stood by your side for 3 decades, you bring them to my home and expect me to react like some helpless, heartbroken fool?" He opened his mouth, but no words came. "And that box," I continued, pointing at it, "contains every record, every transfer, every little secret you thought you buried. That's why I smiled when you looked so nervous today, because I've known this day would come. And unlike you, I prepared." Then I turned to the other woman. "You said you didn't come for drama. Good, because I don't do drama anymore. I do consequences." Daniel swallowed. "Consequences?" I nodded slowly. "You'll see." I looked at the teens, not with anger, not with resentment, but with the clarity of a woman who refuses to misplace blame. "This isn't your fault," I told them. "You didn't ask to be born into a lie." They both nodded, almost relieved. Then I turned back to their mother. "But you," I paused, letting the moment grow heavy. "You knew he was married." She froze, but didn't deny it. "And you knew 30 years ago," I added softly. "And you still stayed." Silence. Chaos sat in the corner of the room like a guest waiting to be acknowledged. But I wasn't going to let chaos speak. Not yet. I took a slow breath, held it, let it settle. Then I said the words that made everyone stare at me, as if I had just flipped the earth off its axis. "Part 2 of this birthday celebration," I said calmly, "starts now." And I walked toward the dining room, leaving all of them in stunned silence behind me. I walked into the dining room slowly, letting the sound of my heels echo against the hardwood floor, a sound sharp enough to slice through the tension in the living room. Behind me, no one moved. Not Daniel, not the woman, not the kids, not even his mother. They stood frozen, like a family portrait painted right at the climax of a tragedy. My daughter hurried to my side, whispering, "Mom, what are you doing? What's happening? Why are they here?" I squeezed her hand. "Sweetheart, I need you to trust me right now. Everything is under control." Her eyes scanned my face. She must have seen the steadiness there, because she nodded and stepped back, though she stayed close, like a soldier standing guard beside her queen. A queen. That's exactly how I felt. Not a victim, not a heartbroken wife, a woman reclaiming her kingdom. I sat at the head of the dining table, the same table where I had hosted Thanksgiving dinners, birthday breakfasts, graduation celebrations, the table where I had built decades of memories. And now, it was about to be the place where decades of lies got formally dismantled. "Daniel," I called, my voice calm, even warm. "Bring them in." He hesitated in the doorway, looking like a guilty child, told to confess in front of the class. But eventually, he motioned for the others to follow him. The teens stepped in first, their mother behind them, then Daniel's mother, and finally Daniel himself, who took the seat across from me. I folded my hands on the table. "You all must be wondering," I began, "why I'm not yelling, why I'm not crying, why I'm not throwing you out." They remained silent. The woman, his other woman, gave a small huff. "You're acting like you expected this." I tilted my head. "I did." Her eyebrows furrowed. "What does that even mean?" "It means," I said gently, "that a woman always knows, even when she pretends she doesn't." The older boy, maybe 18, spoke for the first time. "You're really calm, ma'am." I smiled at him, soft, understanding, because my anger is too big to waste on noise. A girl beside him looked at me like she wasn't sure whether to fear me or admire me. Daniel tried to interject. "Honey, they just came to meet you. They just wanted." I held up a hand. "No, they came because you invited them. On my birthday, without asking me, without preparing me, without warning your daughter, without any thought for the life we built." His mother spoke up then, voice shaky. "He thought, maybe it was time, for you to know the truth." I nodded slowly. "The truth," I repeated. "That's an interesting word." Then I leaned back in my chair. "You see," I said calmly, "there's a difference between truth and confession. Truth is something lived. Confession is something someone finally spits out when the lie becomes too heavy." Daniel's mother lowered her head. The woman across from me scoffed. "You act like he didn't want to tell you." I cut in before she could finish. "Oh no, he didn't want to tell me. He wanted me to accept whatever scraps of honesty he felt comfortable giving." Daniel opened his mouth, but I continued. "But you all deserve to know something." I paused, letting the suspense settle. "I've known about all of you for 3 years." The room went silent, a deep, stunned silence that vibrated in the air. The other woman frowned hard. No, that's not true." The teens looked at each other in confusion. Daniel's mother gasped. "You knew?" Daniel himself went pale. How could you have known?" I sighed. Not dramatically, but in the soft, weary way someone does when they finally stop carrying the weight of someone else's sins. "Because lies," I said, "always leave footprints. And eventually, those footprints lead somewhere." I looked at the other woman. "You think those monthly payments went unnoticed? The cash withdrawals? The sudden weekends visiting old friends? The change in your perfume because you thought I wouldn't recognize it?" Her eyes widened, and for the first time since she walked into my home, she looked scared. I continued, "I hired a private investigator 3 years ago. He tracked every withdrawal, every phone call, every secret meeting, every place you two thought you were being clever." Daniel sank back in his chair. I leaned forward. "I knew everything. I just wasn't ready to confront it. Not until I had options. My own accounts, my own lawyer, my own plan." The older daughter, his daughter, spoke then, softly. "You prepared?" "Yes," I said, "because I knew that when your father finally faced his truth, he'd do it selfishly. At the worst time, in the worst way. Guess what? I spread my hands wide. He proved me right." Daniel wiped his face. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I wasn't going to fight for a man who wasn't fighting for me." My voice grew colder. And because I wasn't going to confront 30 years of lies without a way to protect myself and my daughter. His daughter, the older one, whispered, "He said he stayed with you because you were fragile." I laughed, the sharp, humorless laugh. Fragile? Oh no, I wasn't fragile. I was loyal. I was trusting. I was loving, and he mistook that for weakness. The woman beside her shifted uncomfortably. I locked eyes with her. "And you thought keeping this secret made you the winner?" She stiffened. "No, dear," I said softly. "You were the secret, and secrets don't win." Her jaw tightened. I continued. "If you thought today was the day you'd get recognition, celebration, validation, you miscalculated just as badly as he did." Daniel rubbed his temples. "This isn't how I wanted it to go." I raised an eyebrow. "Really? Then how did you want it to go? You wanted a hug? A thank you? A warm welcome for the family you raised behind my back?" His mother whispered, "He just wanted peace." "Oh," I said sharply, "he wanted peace? While building two lives? Lying to two families?" Juggling responsibilities he hid from both sides. No one answered. I pushed back my chair and stood. "You all want honesty today?" I asked. "Good, because here it comes." I walked to the counter, picked up a second envelope, this one, thicker, heavier, and placed it in front of Daniel. "This," I said, "is my response to your surprise birthday gift." He stared at the envelope like it might burn him. "Open it," I said. His shaking fingers tore it open. Inside was the beginning of something none of them expected. Something that would change all of their lives. Something that would prove I wasn't the woman they thought I was. Not fragile, not naive, not broken, but strategic, prepared, and done. The older daughter leaned forward, squinting. What is that?" I smiled slowly. "Part 3 of this celebration," I said, "is called consequences." Daniel's fingers trembled as he pulled the papers from the thick envelope. The room leaned forward, not physically, but emotionally, like the air itself was waiting for the reveal. His mother clutched her purse tighter. The teens held their breath. The other woman stared at me, like she was finally realizing she had stepped into a battlefield she didn't understand. My daughter stood at my side, arms crossed, jaw set, protective energy radiating off her like heat. Daniel unfolded the first document. His eyes widened, his throat bobbed. "No, no, you didn't." "Oh, but I did," I said softly. He lifted the papers higher, and the woman gasped when she saw the bold, centered title, "Petition for Legal Separation and Asset Restructuring." His mother covered her mouth. His older daughter blinked rapidly, struggling to process. The other woman whispered something under her breath that sounded very much like, "Damn." Daniel's voice cracked. "You're leaving me?" I tilted my head. "Leaving? Oh, Daniel, sweetheart. I left you emotionally the moment I learned who you really were. The paperwork is just a formality." He shook his head, panicked. "No, you can't. Not today. Not in front of them." I leaned forward. "You brought your mess into my house. I'm simply showing you that I already cleaned up mine." The teens exchanged uneasy glances. The boy whispered, "This is so messed up." I softened my gaze at him and nodded once. "You're right, and none of it is on you." Then I turned back to Daniel. "I'm done being the only one who pays the emotional bill for your choices." He stood abruptly, chair scraping loudly. "You can't just blindside me with this." My daughter stepped closer, not aggressively, but protectively. I lifted a calm hand. "Sit down, Daniel." He hesitated. "Sit," I repeated, not raising my voice, not threatening, just certain. He sat. Because deep down, even he knew, a man who lies for 30 years forfeits the privilege of outrage. I continued. That packet includes my proposal. It's generous considering the circumstances. His face twisted. What circumstances? I gave him a look that said not to insult my intelligence. But instead of responding, I retrieved a second document from the envelope and placed it gently on the table. This, I said, is the part I spent the last 2 years preparing. He frowned. 2 years. Yes, I said. While you spent 30 years building 2 lives, I spent 2 years making sure I wasn't destroyed when the truth came crashing down. The other woman scoffed. You were planning to leave him before he even told you? I looked at her evenly. I learned something important in my 50s. Protecting yourself isn't betrayal. It's survival. Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't argue. I tapped the second document. This is a forensic financial audit done by a professional of every account, every credit card, every transfer, every private bank deposit you've made for the last 15 years. Daniel's mouth fell open. Yes, I continued, 15, because I had a feeling your betrayal didn't start recently, and my investigator confirmed that. He whispered, You spied on me. I investigated the man who was betraying me. Big difference. He rubbed his face in disbelief. His mother spoke softly. Why didn't you confront him earlier? I turned to her, because I wasn't going to walk out of a 30-year marriage empty-handed while he lived a double life comfortably. I wasn't going to scream and cry like the naive wife everyone assumed I was. I wasn't going to explode. I smiled. I was going to strategize. Daniel swallowed hard. My daughter looked at me with admiration so fierce, it almost made my eyes sting. But I stayed composed. I slid one more thing from the envelope, a small, neatly bound booklet. This is the list of assets I've already moved into my own name. The older daughter, his, blinked. You already moved things? Yes, I said. The lake house, the rental property, the certificates of deposit, the stocks, all legally transferred because they were initially purchased with my inheritance. Daniel's jaw dropped. My inheritance from my mother, I reminded him. The one you always swore you would never touch. And yet, somehow, you did. The other woman snapped. He told us he was struggling financially. He said he couldn't help us more because of you. I held up a hand. Let me stop you right there. I looked her dead in the eye. You didn't get more because he didn't have more. Not because of me. Because of him. He lied to you too. Her face faltered. Her expression cracked. The bravado slipped. The teens glanced at their mother, unsure now, shadows of doubt clouding their faces. Daniel stood again, desperate. Can we talk privately? Please, not in front of them. No, I said firmly, because you brought them into my life without consent. So now they get to hear the truth with you. He closed his eyes, defeated. I reached for the final paper in the envelope. And one more thing. The room held its breath. This, I said, sliding it toward him, is the date of my appointment with my attorney next week. Daniel's voice shook. You already filed? No, I said softly. I gave you the chance. You just didn't know it. I waited to see if you would tell me the truth on your own. And you didn't. Not months ago. Not years ago. Not ever. I took a slow, steady breath. You only told me today because your lies finally caught up and knocked on our door. He whispered, I didn't want to hurt you. I laughed, a low, sad, but strong laugh. Daniel, you hurt me 30 years ago. You just didn't think the wound would ever open. The other woman's voice cracked unexpectedly. So, what happens now? I looked at her, not with hatred, but with a clarity that cut deeper than anger ever could. What happens now is simple, I said. I continue my life with dignity, with peace, with my daughter. You all figure out what your relationship looks like without the shadow of lies. The boy spoke then, voice trembling slightly. "Are you leaving him today?" I paused. Then I gave the answer Daniel feared most, and the room least expected. "No," I said, "not today." Everyone looked confused. I continued calmly. "Today isn't the day I leave. Today is the day he learns I can." Daniel's lips parted, trembling. "And tomorrow," I said, "is the day I decide whether I still will." The silence that followed wasn't just silence. It was the shattering of a man's illusion, the awakening of his hidden family, and the rebirth of the woman he never thought would rise. Daniel stared at me like he was seeing a stranger, or maybe he was finally seeing me for the first time. Not the wife who waited up for him. Not the woman who forgave late nights and ignored suspicious phone calls. Not the partner who smoothed over his faults and held the family together. No, he was looking at a woman who could walk away. A woman who had options. A woman he never expected to be this strong. And that terrified him. His mother, who had always treated me with a delicate blend of respect and distance, sank slowly into the nearest chair. Her voice cracked. You've been planning this for years?" I nodded. "Yes, planning how to protect myself, not how to hurt any of you." The other woman, the one who had stood bold and confident at my door an hour ago, looked suddenly small. "You wanted to protect yourself from him?" I looked at her with a quiet sadness. "No. I wanted to protect myself from the consequences of loving a man who didn't love me enough to tell me the truth." She swallowed, guilt swirling behind her eyes. But before she could respond, the older daughter, the woman in her early 40s, stood up slowly, almost mechanically. "Dad," she whispered, "you told us she was fragile. You said she couldn't handle the truth." Daniel flinched like she had slapped him. His daughter continued, voice gaining strength with every word. "You said you stayed because she needed you. Because she was sensitive. Because she couldn't handle life on her own." My daughter stepped forward immediately. "She built everything you see. She held this house together when he wasn't around. She raised me practically on her own when he was on business trips. She was the strong one, not him." Daniel looked between the two girls, his daughter from me and his daughter from his other life, and for the first time, he seemed to realize what he had truly done. He hadn't lied to one woman. He had lied to every woman in his life, his daughters, his mother, me, and even the woman he cheated with. The older daughter's voice trembled. "So all these years, you made us feel like we were the reason you couldn't come around more. You made us think it was because she needed you." He opened his mouth, but no defense came. I leaned back in my chair, watching everything unravel, not with satisfaction, but with clarity. This wasn't revenge. It was truth doing what truth always does, exposing everything built on lies. The other woman's face crumpled as she turned to the teens. Her kids, Daniel's kids. "I didn't know," she whispered, voice breaking. "He told me he loved me. He told me he didn't love her. He told me he stayed with her because she couldn't manage on her own." The kids looked stunned, betrayed not just by him, but now by their own mother for believing him so blindly. I stood up slowly, letting the gravity of the moment settle. "I'm going to say something now, and I want everyone to hear it clearly." Every eye turned toward me. I placed both palms gently on the table. "I am not your enemy." The teens stared at me, breathing shallowly. I continued, "You're children who grew up in a lie you didn't choose. You aren't to blame. You didn't hurt me. You didn't break this marriage." Their mother's chin quivered. "You should hate me." I shook my head. "Hate is too expensive. I don't have the time or the energy to hate you. I'm too busy healing from a man I trusted." Daniel tensed, but he didn't interrupt. I walked around the table slowly, stopping near the teens. "I'm sorry you're hurting," I said gently. "I'm sorry you were kept secret. I'm sorry your memories with him are shadowed by choices he made. But listen to me. This is not your shame to carry. Not 1 ounce of it. The boy wiped his eyes, embarrassed. Thank you, he whispered. The girl beside him nodded, tears brimming. Their mother looked overwhelmed. That's more grace than I thought you'd give. I nodded once. Grace isn't for him. It's for the innocent. Then I turned back to Daniel. But you, I said quietly, you're not innocent. He lowered his head. I continued. You didn't just betray me. You betrayed your daughter. You betrayed them. You betrayed their mother. You betrayed your own mother. He winced, as if every sentence were a punch. And worst of all, I added, you betrayed the version of yourself you swore you wanted to be. His mother wiped her eyes. How could you do this to all of us, Daniel? He finally spoke, voice small. I thought I could keep both parts of my life separate. I thought if I gave enough love to both sides, no one would get hurt. I stared at him, shocked at the delusion. You thought lies could protect people? He nodded weakly. I exhaled slowly. Lies don't protect. They poison. He sank into his chair, defeated. Then something unexpected happened. The older daughter, his daughter from the other family, stepped toward me. I'm sorry, she said, for everything he did, for everything we didn't know. I placed a gentle hand on her arm. You don't owe me an apology. You owe yourself healing. She blinked rapidly, tears forming. My daughter moved toward her and wrapped an arm around her shoulders. A gesture that, two daughters from two separate lives, united not by their father, but by the truth he never gave them. The moment was emotional, heavy, real. But then Daniel looked up at me, desperation in his eyes. What do you want from me? He asked, voice hollow. I walked back to my seat, sat down, crossed my legs, and looked at him with the calmness of someone who had waited years for this moment. What I want, I said softly, comes in steps. He swallowed. What steps? I held up a single finger. Step 1, honesty. Full honesty. No more half-truths. No more omissions. No more performance. I held up a second finger. Step 2, accountability. Meaning you take responsibility for every consequence coming your way without blaming me, them, or your past. Then I held up a third finger. And step 3, freedom. Yours and mine. He blinked. Freedom? I nodded. Freedom from lies. Freedom from guilt. Freedom from pretending. Freedom from living in a marriage that has been. He stared at me, lost. And at the end of these steps, what? You'll stay? I smiled gently, sorrowfully. Daniel, these steps aren't for saving the marriage. These steps are for ending it with dignity. He froze. The other woman gasped softly. His mother whispered, "Oh, Lord." But I continued with clarity, strength, and the absolute truth. Part 5 of this birthday celebration, I said, is acceptance. And everyone in that dining room knew the same thing. Nothing would ever go back to the way it was. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. I didn't sleep the night after I sent Marcus out of the house. Not because I regretted it, but because something inside me, something deeper than anger, had finally awakened. A clarity, a cold, quiet strength I didn't recognize at first. The kind you only earn after surviving heartbreak so big, it resets your entire identity. By sunrise, I wasn't a broken wife. I was a woman preparing for truth. And most importantly, ... When Marcus stepped into my house on my birthday with a secret family, he thought he was detonating my life. But what he didn't know was that I had already been collecting pieces of a puzzle long before that day. I'd found suspicious receipts, late-night messages he insisted were work emergencies, a hidden folder in his old desktop computer labeled Taxes Archive 1994, which somehow contained nothing but photos of a toddler who shared his eyes. And then there were his emotional shifts, the guilt-driven kindness, the unexplained irritability, the sudden generosity that always comes from a man trying to cover up a truth he knows will eventually surface. For 30 years, I had been living next to a stranger, but it wasn't until my birthday confrontation, when he brought that smiling woman and those grown children into my home, that the story fully snapped into focus. And now, I was done being confused. I was ready to expose everything. After pacing the living room for hours, I finally picked up the phone. Not to call my friends, not to call his family, not even to call a lawyer. Not yet. I called someone Marcus never expected, Dr. Elaine Harper, my marriage counselor from 20 years ago. The one he refused to continue seeing because he claimed she took my side too much. Elaine answered on the second ring. Her voice was soft, but razor-sharp with intuition. Did something finally happen? I inhaled shakily. More than something. I gave her a summarized version. The birthday ambush, the secret family, the 3 decades of lies. She didn't sound surprised. You always had solid instincts, she said calmly. You just loved him too loudly to hear them. That sentence hit harder than anything my husband had said in the last 30 years. Then she added, I assume you're ready to stop protecting him. I closed my eyes. Yes. Good. Then you and I have work to do. Here's the part I didn't expect. Elaine had her own history with Marcus. No, not romantic. Professional. During our counseling sessions decades ago, she'd taken detailed notes, far more detailed than what she had shown me back then. And she hinted that Marcus had said things, admitted things, that could help me understand the full scope of the betrayal. Can you send them to me? I asked. Not over the phone. These need context, and frankly, you need support. What kind of support? The kind you've denied yourself for 30 years. She wanted to meet in person. That alone told me something was terribly wrong, something deeper than an affair, something that stretched back decades, something Marcus never expected to resurface. I agreed to see her the next morning. That night, the silence was strange, not painful, not anymore, but revealing. The house felt bigger. The air felt lighter. The walls no longer vibrated with the tension of a man who lived inside them like a secret constantly threatening to explode. I made myself tea and walked through each room, seeing my home clearly for the first time. The framed wedding photo? A lie captured in 8 by 10. The anniversary clock he bought me on our 25th year? He probably bought a matching one for the other woman. The world's best dad mug from our kids? I set it aside, unsure if it belonged in the trash or a crime scene. But the hardest part was the room he slept in, the chair he always sat in, the spot at the kitchen counter where he read the paper every morning. They weren't sacred. They weren't painful. They were empty, like he'd been gone for years already. And maybe, in a way, he had been. Just as I was closing the curtains for the night, my phone buzzed. It was Marcus. I almost ignored it, but a strange instinct made me open it. His message wasn't an apology. It wasn't an explanation. It wasn't even denial. It was worse. It was manipulative. We need to talk. This got out of control. You embarrassed me in front of them. I deserve respect after all I've done for you. I stared at the screen in disbelief. All he'd done for me? 30 years of betrayal, 30 years of financial secrets, 30 years of emotional abandonment. And he wanted respect? I didn't respond. But I saved the message. By morning, I felt like I was living inside someone else's body. Someone stronger, someone more focused, someone finally awake. I drove across town to Elaine's office, my hands steady, my heart oddly calm. She was already waiting for me, 2 thick folders on the table. Not 1, 2. One with my name, one with his. Why? She folded her hands. Because you weren't just coming in as a wife. You were coming in as a woman in danger. My stomach tightened. Danger? Yes, emotional danger, financial danger, spiritual danger. And based on what I learned back then, potential legal danger. Legal. That word hit hard. What did he confess? I whispered. She opened the first folder, then the second. There are things, she said slowly, you were never supposed to know. Elaine pushing the two thick folders toward me across the wooden table. Her expression grave in a way that made my stomach feel like it was falling through the floor. I thought I had prepared myself for anything. I thought nothing could hurt worse than the moment my husband walked into my birthday party with a smiling woman and 3 grown children who shared his blood. I thought the betrayal itself was the peak of pain. But the look in Elaine's eyes told me that the story I believed, the simple, awful narrative of a secret family, was only the surface of something much darker, much older, and far more deliberate. My fingers trembled as I opened the first folder, the one with my name. I remembered those early sessions with her. I had been in my late 30s then, fragile, hopeful, still giving Marcus the benefit of the doubt, even when my heart screamed there was something off. I used to sit on the sofa in her office, twisting tissues in my hands, trying to explain why I felt lonely in a marriage that looked perfect from the outside. I had no idea that while I was baring my soul trying to fix us, Marcus had been doing something entirely different. Elaine tapped the second folder gently. Start with his, she said softly. Yours will make more sense afterward. I opened Marcus's folder, expecting the usual. Notes about communication issues, shallow confessions, maybe the early signs of emotional distancing. What I found instead was a transcript, almost verbatim, of things he told her privately, in sessions I had never known he attended alone. Lines of his thoughts, his fears, his justifications, and something else, a pattern so calculated it made my skin crawl. The first thing I noticed was how early the lies began. 28 years ago, 2 years after we married, he had already confessed to Elaine that he'd been seeing someone else. Not the woman he brought to my birthday, someone before her. Someone he described as temporary, comfort, a phase. He told Elaine he would end it. He told her he loved me. He told her he made a mistake. But what chilled me wasn't the affair. It was the tone. Cold, detached, like a man discussing a business transaction, not a betrayal. Then the second affair, the real one, the long-term one, appeared in the notes about 5 years into our marriage. That was the woman he brought to my birthday, the one he had children with. According to the notes, he had started the relationship while promising me he was working late. He told Elaine he didn't plan for it to last. He told her the woman had needs he felt obligated to meet. And then, almost casually, he mentioned she was pregnant. I felt myself go cold. He had known she was pregnant 25 years ago and told no one, not me, not his family, not our children, not even Elaine initially. For months, the note said, he had sat in our marriage counseling sessions pretending to work on things, while secretly preparing for a child born outside our marriage. But then came the sentence that made the room tilt. He expressed that he does not intend to tell his wife unless absolutely necessary. Unless absolutely necessary. My whole life had been placed under a condition he got to define. I looked up at Elaine, but she gestured for me to keep reading. And so I did. The next pages revealed something I had not expected at all. Not just infidelity, but long-term financial deception. Secret accounts, transfers, investments he made under false names, income he hid, benefits he filed for that I never knew existed. He had moved money methodically over the years, slowly, secretly, ensuring that if anything ever went wrong, he would be protected and I would be left with nothing. I felt dizzy. "He planned this?" I whispered. "Not the birthday," she said softly. "But the double life? Yes, for decades." I read further. The notes from 14 years ago described major tension between Marcus and the woman. Not because of guilt, but because she wanted him to leave me, and he refused. Not for love, but because he feared dividing assets, losing half of his retirement, weakening his financial stability. He didn't stay with me because he cared. He stayed because he benefited. Then the notes mentioned something even worse, something he had never hinted at in all our years together. A lawsuit, filed quietly by the woman when one of the children was young. A lawsuit for support. A lawsuit he settled secretly. A lawsuit he admitted paying under the table, so it wouldn't reach me. There were legal documents, copies, dates, proof. By this point, my hands were shaking. I felt like I was watching my entire life rewritten in red ink, the truth shredding through memories I once cherished. I looked at Elaine. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you warn me 20 years ago?" Her expression softened with a sorrow that felt real, deep and personal. "Because you weren't safe. You were emotionally vulnerable. You still believed in him. If I had confronted him with these notes, he would have stopped showing up. If I had told you, he would have isolated you. I needed you to see his pattern in your own time." "My own time?" I whispered. "It took 30 years. It takes as long as it takes," she answered gently. "But now you're here, and now you're strong." I wasn't sure I believed her. I felt like collapsing, like breaking apart. But beneath the pain, beneath the nausea, beneath the shock, something else was rising. Something fierce, something unforgiving. Something that had slept inside me for decades and was finally done being quiet. I closed Marcus's folder and opened mine. Inside were notes about me, my kindness, my loyalty, my willingness to compromise, my excuses for his behavior, my fear of abandonment, my desire for a stable home for our children, my confusion about small lies that I couldn't prove but always felt. Line after line of a woman trying to carry a marriage alone. And at the end of the folder, in handwriting unmistakably Elaine's, one final note. "She is not aware of her power yet, but when she discovers the truth, she will rise." The moment I read that sentence, I felt something break open inside me. Not a wound, but a door. I looked up. "What do I do now?" Elaine leaned forward, folding her hands over the table. "Now," she said with quiet certainty, "you stop surviving and start fighting. Because Marcus did not just betray your marriage, he betrayed the law. And the moment you decide you're ready, I will help you bring everything to the light." My pulse thudded in my ears. Why did he come to my birthday with them? Why now? She exhaled slowly. Because something pressured him. Something recent. Something he can no longer control. What kind of pressure? Elaine reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a thin, pale envelope. "This arrived at my office 2 weeks ago," she said. "And once you read it, everything will make sense." And with that, she placed the envelope in my hands. The envelope that would unravel the last secret Marcus had been hiding. The envelope in my hands, the thin paper feeling heavier than it should, as if the truth inside it carried its own weight. I turned it over slowly, the edges soft from being handled. My name wasn't on it, neither was Marcus's. Instead, across the front, in neat typed letters, it said, "To the attending counselor of M. Halstead." Seeing his last name without the Mr. didn't feel formal. It felt cold. It felt like the kind of label you put on a file you're about to close. I looked up at Elaine, who watched me with the kind of patience that only comes from years of seeing people walk into pain they didn't know existed. "Open it," she said quietly. I slid my finger under the flap and pulled out a single sheet of paper. The first thing I saw was a letterhead. Legal. Not a local firm. A large corporate firm from another state. The kind of firm you only contact when you're protecting something big or hiding something bigger. The letter was short. Too short. A notification. A request. A warning. It stated that the firm was conducting a review involving Marcus Halstead, specifically concerning potential claims of financial negligence, concealed assets, and failure to disclose dependence on official documents. They requested any professional records or notes relevant to patterns of dishonesty, financial manipulation, or undisclosed familial responsibilities. It also mentioned something else, something that sent a slow burn through my bloodstream. A whistleblower had come forward. Someone had reported him. Someone with information. Someone who knew everything. My first guess was the woman, the mother of his other children, but something about that didn't feel right. She had lived in secrecy for years, benefiting from his help in the shadows. She had too much to lose. She wouldn't expose herself or her children to a legal storm unless she had no choice. So who? Who sent this? I asked, though the letter didn't name anyone. Elaine folded her hands. I don't know who the whistleblower is, but the firm handling this doesn't take small cases. This is not about morality. It's about money and liability. I stared at the letter again. This is why he came to my birthday. Exactly, she said. This forced him into panic. Someone threatened a secrecy he depended on. Bringing them to you wasn't an act of honesty. It was an act of desperation. It made sense in a cruel way. He hadn't revealed his other family to repair anything. He had revealed them to control the narrative before it reached me through legal channels. He wanted me blindsided, emotional, reactive, easier to manipulate. He wanted to act like the wounded party, the misunderstood man caught in a complicated situation. He wanted sympathy. He wanted leverage. He wanted to look like the victim. But reading that letter, sitting in that office, I realized one thing with painful clarity. Marcus wasn't losing control. He had already lost it. The truth had slipped out through someone he didn't expect, creating consequences he could no longer manage. I sank back into my chair. So what happens now? What are they investigating? His finances, she replied. His hidden accounts, his false filings, his non-disclosure of dependents, his marital assets, and possibly what? I whispered. She hesitated. Possibly bigamy. My breath caught. We're still legally married. Yes, and depending on the relationship he maintained with the other woman, financially, domestically, legally, there may be grounds for a bigamy inquiry. I felt the ground shift under me. Bigamy wasn't just cheating. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a crime with legal consequences. He could go to prison, I said under my breath. Elaine didn't respond. I thought about the woman. I thought about her children, the 3 faces at my birthday, the way one of them couldn't look at me, the way another stared at the floor, and the oldest, the girl who resembled Marcus so much it almost split me in half. She had watched me with something between guilt and fear. Had they known? Had they understood the legal mess he was dragging them into? Or had they been lied to too? I set the envelope down carefully. So what do I do? File something? Report him? You don't file anything yet, Elaine said gently. First, you protect yourself. You gather documents, records, anything he might try to use against you. You secure finances he cannot manipulate. You prepare emotionally for the storm that's coming. I don't want to ruin his life, I said, almost ashamed of the sentence. She gave me a look that was neither judgmental nor surprised. And yet he has been prepared to ruin yours for 3 decades. Something inside me tightened. She was right. Every dollar he'd hidden, every lie he'd told, every year He'd let me believe our family was whole. He had risked everything we built to maintain a secret he chose, a life he created behind my back, and a narrative that depended on my ignorance. The compassion I had been raised with felt suddenly misplaced, misused. He blindsided you publicly, Elaine continued. He let you smile and cut your birthday cake, while knowing he was about to bring another family into your home. He humiliated you. He destabilized you. He forced you into shock because shock creates silence. She leaned closer. You are allowed to protect yourself. For a long moment, I just sat there, absorbing the truth. I wasn't being vengeful by standing up for myself. I wasn't being cruel by refusing to carry the shame of his actions. He had chosen his duplicity. He had chosen deception as a lifestyle. He had chosen a second family. He had chosen to hide them. And when he could no longer control the situation, he chose to drag me into it publicly, because that made him feel powerful. That realization didn't break me. It unlocked something. I want to know everything, I said finally, my voice steady. And you will, Elaine said softly. Her phone buzzed. She glanced down, her expression shifting in a way that alerted me instantly. Concern, confusion, a hint of alarm. What is it? I asked. She slowly turned the phone toward me. On the screen was a text from a number she didn't recognize. It read, "We need to talk. She deserves the truth. And so do her children." Below that, another message. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have kept silent all these years." I felt my pulse throb. "Who is that?" I whispered. Elaine exhaled. "I think your whistleblower just reached out directly." A third message popped in. "Please, I need to tell her what he told me before he disappeared." The word disappeared punched the air out of my lungs. Before. My mouth went dry. My heart began to race. I looked at Elaine. She looked at me, and in a voice so quiet it barely existed, she said, "This isn't just a secret family. There's something else happening here." And then her phone buzzed again, a single new message. This one read, "He's missing." A silence so sharp it felt like the air changed around us. The word missing kept echoing in my mind, hollow and impossible, like a sound coming from inside a cave. For years I had imagined every version of Marcus, angry, regretful, arrogant, terrified. But never once had I imagined him gone. The man who had controlled every detail of two lives at once didn't just disappear. Men like him didn't vanish. They hid, they plotted, they maneuvered. But missing? My pulse thudded against my ribs as I stared at the message on Elaine's phone. "This has to be a mistake," I whispered. "He can't just disappear." Elaine didn't answer. She was reading the message again, her brows pulling together, processing every implication. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed once more, the same unknown number. "Please, I will only speak to his wife or to you. It's urgent. I can explain everything." I swallowed hard. "Who is this person?" Elaine typed back cautiously. "Who are you?" A reply came almost immediately. "My name is Daniel." The name meant nothing to me. No spark of memory. No distant echo of recognition. Just a single name in a storm of unknowns. Another message followed. "I was involved with Marcus on the financial side. I know things he didn't want anyone to know." My stomach dropped. Not a lover. Not a friend. Not the other woman. Not one of the children. Someone from the financial side. Someone who had been part of the hidden world Marcus built. The one I'd only glimpsed through scraps of evidence. Elaine exhaled slowly. "We need more information before we meet A." But before she could type again, a new message appeared. "He told me the truth about the other family and something else. Something that puts all of you at risk. All of you. Not just me. Not just the other woman. My children. A wave of protective panic rushed through me, hot and fierce. What does he mean something else? What else could there be? Elaine shook her head. We don't know yet. Let's not assume anything. But my mind was already racing. Marcus had hidden another family for decades. He had lied about money. He had hidden accounts, manipulated documents, misrepresented income. He had done everything carefully, strategically, methodically. Men like that didn't leave loose ends. Unless they were forced to. Unless someone threatened him. Unless he knew something was coming that he couldn't outrun. Ask him what he means, I said. Elaine typed a simple message. What risk are you referring to? Please be direct. Dots appeared, vanished, reappeared. Whoever this Daniel was, he was hesitating, choosing words. That alone terrified me more than anything he could say. Finally, the message came. Marcus wasn't the only one hiding something. He was protecting someone, and now that person is looking for him. I felt the hairs rise on the back of my neck. Protecting someone? I leaned forward, fighting the urge to snatch the phone from Elaine's hand. Ask him who. Ask him who Marcus was protecting. Elaine typed quickly, "Who is this person?" The response appeared after a long pause. Someone you've never met. Someone the second family doesn't know about either. My breath froze. A third life? Another secret? Another person? My hands tightened around the arm of the chair. What does he mean? Another family? Elaine looked troubled. Let's not jump to conclusions, not yet. But the next message from Daniel confirmed the fear forming inside my chest. There is a third connection, not a family exactly. Someone tied to Marcus through money, someone dangerous. Dangerous. The word hit like cold water. Elaine's eyes lifted to mine. This has become bigger than infidelity. Before I could respond, her phone rang. Not a text, but a full call from the same unknown number. She hesitated for a second, then answered on speakerphone. This is Dr. Harper. A man's voice came through, breathless, strained, as though he were speaking from the inside of a moving vehicle or after running. Thank God, he said. You need to listen, both of you. I didn't say anything. I just held my breath, leaning closer. I don't have much time, he continued. I didn't know what Marcus planned to do. I swear I didn't. I thought he was just trying to clean up loose ends. Why is he missing? I finally managed to ask. There was a pause on the other end. Then, because he found out someone was going to expose everything, not just the second family. All of it. The finances, the fake accounts, the investments under false names, the offshore transfers. Offshore. I shut my eyes. I hadn't even considered offshore accounts. How long? Elaine asked calmly. How long has this been going on? Decades, the man said. He started it before the first affair, before he had kids with the other woman, before anything you know. My heart hammered. Before the affairs, before the children, before the marriage counseling, before the life I thought I had, meaning the lies weren't born from temptation or weakness or a failing marriage. They were there from the beginning. He didn't break our vows. He never honored them. What do you mean someone dangerous? Elaine asked quietly. Daniel's breathing grew shaky. One of the men he moved money for. He's not the type you walk away from. When Marcus realized the firm was investigating him, he panicked. He knew if they uncovered those accounts, everything tied to that man would come out too. And that man is looking for him now, Elaine asked. Yes, Daniel said. And when he can't find Marcus, he's going to look for the people closest to him. I felt myself go cold. My children, me, possibly the other woman and her children. We didn't know, I whispered. We didn't know anything. I believe you, he said, but that doesn't matter to him. Elaine's voice sharpened. Why are you helping? Why now? Because Marcus told me something before he disappeared, Daniel said quietly. Something about his wife. My pulse stopped. "He made me promise," Daniel continued. "If anything happened to him, I had to warn you. I had to tell you the truth." "What truth?" I choked out. And then, after a long pause, he said, "He wasn't hiding the other family to protect himself. He was hiding them to protect you." The room spun. I gripped the edge of the table. "Protect me from what?" His voice dropped. "From the man whose money he moved. From the man who thinks your husband S. From the man who thinks you might know something." My throat tightened. "What does he want?" I whispered. Daniel's answer came like a blade sliding into the room. "He wants silence, and he thinks you can provide it." The line crackled. Then he said the words that shifted my entire world on its axis. "Marcus didn't bring the second family to hurt you. He brought them because he knew the dangerous man had found out they existed. He was trying to confuse him. Move the target away from you." I felt dizzy. A target. Me. "We need to meet," Daniel said urgently. "Tonight, somewhere safe. I have documents. Proof." And the last message Marcus left before he vanished. Elaine looked at me. I looked back. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I realized this wasn't just betrayal. This was danger. Real danger. And Marcus's disappearance was not the end of the story. It was the beginning. The room felt impossibly quiet after everyone left. Too quiet for a house that had just hours earlier been buzzing with 30 years' worth of secrets crashing into each other. The soft hum of the refrigerator was the only sound, and even that felt like it was keeping its distance, as if the appliances themselves didn't want to intrude on what came next. I stood there, in the warm spill of the kitchen light, looking at the empty birthday cake box. A few crumbs remained. It struck me then how strange life is. One moment, a cake is whole, beautiful, decorated, promising something sweet. The next moment, it's cut into messy slices, eaten by people who barely knew each other existed until today. And yet, somehow, those crumbs still meant something. When my husband, my soon-to-be ex-husband, as my mind kept reminding me, returned from dropping the other family off at their hotel, he walked in with a face that looked 20 years older than the man I married. Not older in the physical sense. Older in the way people look when they have finally realized there is no more running, no more pretending, no more telling themselves they'll deal with it later. He stopped in the doorway, like he wasn't sure he was allowed to come any closer. "I thought you might have left," he whispered. "Why?" I asked, not turning fully toward him. "You've had a whole other family for 30 years. I figured disappearing is your thing, not mine." He flinched, and for the first time in decades, I didn't feel the slightest urge to soften the blow. I didn't shrink to make space for his guilt. I didn't wrap my pain in politeness. I simply stood there and let the truth hang in the air like smoke. He stepped closer, slow and careful, as if approaching a wounded animal. "I know you don't believe me, but I didn't stay with them. Not the way you think. I wasn't a husband to her. I wasn't a father to those kids. I don't know what I was. A coward. Someone who thought he could separate pieces of his life and keep them all happy. You failed all of us," I said. "Not one of us got a full version of you. Except you," he whispered. "You got the best of me." I finally turned then, slowly, meeting his eyes. "If I got the best of you, I feel sorry for the rest of them." He closed his eyes like the words physically struck him. Maybe they did. Maybe they should have. We sat down at the kitchen table, not close, not far, just two people sharing the final chapter of something that had been dying long before today. He kept twisting his wedding ring, sliding it up and down the same groove so many times that the skin underneath had a permanent indentation. I wondered if 30 years of switching between two households left a similar mark on him, some invisible groove carved into his soul. "I want to tell you everything," he said. "I don't want everything," I replied immediately. "There's no version of this story that makes it better. I owe you the truth. You owed me the truth 30 years ago." For a long moment, silence filled the room again. But it wasn't the sharp, tense silence from earlier. It was softer, almost resigned. Finally, he spoke. Not in defensiveness, not in excuses, but in exhaustion. "I never stopped loving you. That's the truth. And because of that, I convinced myself I hadn't actually betrayed you. Not fully. As long as I didn't give her the things I gave you, holidays, flowers, the way I talked about you, then it felt like I hadn't crossed a line I could never come back from. You crossed it the moment you stepped into her house," I said quietly. "I know." His voice broke. "I know. And leaving her, I didn't know how to come clean without losing you. I kept telling myself I'd tell you when the time was right. But the time was never right, and I kept running farther, until one day there was no way back. So why today?" I asked. "Why on my birthday?" He swallowed hard, eyes glistening. "Because I couldn't hide it anymore. They're losing their home. Her health is failing. The kids needed answers. And I knew if I didn't bring everything into the open now, I'd lose them too. And I was already losing you. I could feel it. I let him sit with that. Let him feel the weight of it. I gave you that box," I said finally, "because I wanted to remind you that even after everything you've done, every lie, every betrayal, I still believe in consequences that fit the truth. Not revenge, not cruelty, just truth." He frowned, confused. "I opened it. I saw the papers. But I don't understand. Why? Why was there a ribbon? Why was it wrapped like a gift?" "Because it is a gift," I said. "To me and to you and to them." He blinked slowly. "A gift?" "Yes," I whispered. "Freedom is always a gift." Something in him shattered then, quietly, not dramatically, like a mirror cracking in the center. The kind of break that doesn't send pieces flying, but ensures it will never be whole again. He rested his head in his hands. "So that's it?" "That's it," I said. But my voice held no anger anymore, just clarity. A calmness that felt new, unfamiliar, but undeniably mine. We talked for hours after that. About money, houses, retirement accounts, the kids, ours and his other ones. About who gets what and who deserves what. And eventually, we talked. The conversation shifted to something more fragile. "What happens to us now?" he asked softly. I looked at him with a grief I didn't hide. "Nothing happens to us now. That's the point. We stop forcing a story that ended a long time ago." "Can we still be in each other's lives?" he whispered. "Maybe one day," I said, "but not now. I need space to find the woman I was before you split yourself in two." He nodded slowly. "I understand." When he finally gathered his things to leave for the night, just for the night, until lawyers finalized the rest, he paused by the doorway one last time. "I don't deserve your kindness," he said, "but thank you for giving me a chance to face what I did." "It wasn't kindness," I replied. "It was closure." He stepped out into the cold night air. I heard the car door shut, the engine start, then fade down the street until there was nothing left but the sound of my own breathing. I walked upstairs, took off my birthday dress, washed my face, and stood in the mirror longer than I meant to. I expected to see a broken woman, a humiliated woman, a woman whose entire marriage had been exposed as a half-truth. But I didn't. I saw someone reborn, someone who had walked through fire and didn't burn, someone who knew that her next chapter, whatever it became, would be written by her. not in the shadows of someone else's choices. I turned off the bathroom light, climbed into bed alone, and it felt like the begin.